Today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, where we remember, his life and whatnot, and the stuff that he really advocated for and everything. And, of course, I released my own MLK video just today. And so far the response has been pretty good, but there was one particular thing that I knew that I was going to get. I knew that people were going to comment about this, and so I kind of prepared a little something tonight, to talk about it. And so the one thing that was really brought up was his stance on homosexuality, because my video today really emphasized how similar the arguments are and the opposition is to the marriage equality fight. And so, a lot of people brought up one particular thing. This was a column that he wrote in this Ebony magazine. And a young gay man wrote to him saying, "My problem is different from the ones most people have. I am a boy, but I feel about boys the way I ought to feel about girls. I don't want my parents to know about me. What can I do? Is there any place where I can go for help?" And he responded with, "Your problem is not an all uncommon one. However, it does require careful attention. The type of feeling that you have toward boys is probably not an innate tendency, but something that has been culturally acquired. Your reasons for adopting this habit have now been consciously suppressed or unconsciously suppressed. Therefore, it is necessary to deal with this problem by getting back to some of the experiences and circumstances that led to the habit. In order to do this, I would suggest that you see a good psychiatrist who can assist you in bringing to the forefront of your conscious all those experiences and circumstances that led to the habit. You are already on the right road toward a solution, since you honestly recognize the problem and have a desire to solve it." Now, I will say that while he does state homosexuality as a problem, you also have to take into consideration that during that time, in the 1960s, not a lot was known about homosexuality, and at least compared to what we know now, because we know now that it is an innate characteristic of people. We know now that there are a lot of different there are a lot of different species out there that actually do exhibit homosexual tendencies. And so it's a completely natural thing. It's an innate thing. And, I can't really fault Martin Luther King, Dr. King, for not knowing this. And, if you'll notice there, he says it's probably not an innate tendency. He's leaving room for himself to be wrong and to be shown wrong. But still, a lot of people like to say that he was a homophobic preacher. This does not read like a homophobic preacher. We've seen homophobic preachers, and I know they're modern day homophobic preachers, but they were way worse, back in the day. And so what you really have to consider here are the cultural things surrounding that time period, and what kind of environment he was brought up in, and whatnot. So he was raised by a preacher, and he was a preacher himself, and so I think that he probably thought that it was kind of wrong to be homosexual. Now, like I said, though, back then, that was kind of like a common thing. That was a common belief. That doesn't make it right, but I think that, and I'm going to show why I think that here in a second. I think that, given enough time, he definitely would have stood by with the gay rights movement. Whether or not he agreed with the lifestyle wouldn't have affected his own personal reverence for your own, for being yourself and equality, equal rights. I think those things transcended his own personal beliefs. And the reason why I think this is because of this one particular aspect of it Now, one of his daughters said that during a speech at a church meeting in New Zealand, she said that her father did not take a bullet for same-sex marriage. That's a bit disingenuous, because while Martin Luther King did not take a bullet for same-sex marriage per se, what he did take a bullet for was standing up for equal rights of citizens, equal rights for everybody. He would have stood up, for any kind of inequality that exists in our society. I mean, he would have stood right by them. And during the 1960s, he was focused on the plight of the African Americans. So you can't really fault him for not even putting the gay rights movement out there, because with these kind of things, you have to focus on one area. You can't just be so broad that you spread yourself thin and you get nothing done. I mean, he died at the age of 39. He got so much accomplished in that amount of time. And but if you go on to read here, it says, yet her mother, Coretta Scott King, was a vocal supporter of gay rights. One of her closest aides was gay. She also invoked her husband's dream. Ravi Perry, a political science professor at Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts, said King's widow once said in a public speech that everyone who believed in her husband's dream should make room at the table of brother and sisterhood for lesbian and gay people. There is no private or public record of King condemning gay people, Perry says. Even the FBI's surveillance of King's private phone conversations didn't turn up any moment where King disparaged gay people, she says. If Dr. King were anti-gay, there would likely be a sermon, a speech, or a recording of some kind indicating such, she says. And knowing how closely his phones were tapped, surely there would be a record of such statements. So all of his statements, all of his activity was closely documented and recorded. And so I think that we need to take that into consideration with calling him a homophobe or whatnot. While he comes from a Christian background, and he was taught that it was indeed a problem and probably was indeed wrong, he didn't let it affect his own personal view of equal rights, fighting for equal rights and everything like that. He more or less, he stood up for the separation of church and state. There was one question-answer thing that he did where he advocated for the complete separation of church and state and taking out prayer in public schools. So, once you take all those factors into consideration, he definitely would have stood right behind the LGBT community's fight for equal rights, for marriage equality, and everything. So